Welcome back to Sleight of Mind in Alienation series, Part 2. Episode 1 should be viewed prior to continuing. Episode 1 included basic terminology and statistics pertinent to the subject, such as meaning of the terms flying monkey, target, or types of victims. In this episode, we will delve into the feelings, reactions, and coping ideas as they pertain to victim and targets. Then we will take a look at flying monkeys and the manners in which they are used, sometimes abused, and ways that they may eventually be enlightened and make atonement. Victim: anyone who has been used by the person with narcissistic personality disorder, whether used to harm their target or to alienate their target. The person or persons recruited to alienate the target are usually close friends, relatives, and in this author's case, children of the targeted parent. To utilize and recruit the victim usually requires a lot of sleight of mind tactical maneuvering. It also requires time lengthy enough needed to persuade the victim to execute the needed tasks. This time period may be short or long depending on the narcissist's desires. For example, if the need of the victim is only to spread gossip, that task may require only that the victim be coerced using a less serious scenario. That scenario, per this author's experience, was to spread rumors that the target, on 1 or 2 occasions, assaulted the narcissist in some manner. The extreme example may be that the target caused the police to be summoned on several occasions. This example is usually executed after separation of the family and when the victim is in the sole environment of the narcissist. In my case, the narcissist was caught red-handed at the time of the allegations when the child was quite young. This type of preparation is executed over a long period of time, is repetitive, and the victim is sworn to secrecy of some type. For this example, don't ever tell the target, he or she will get back at me. In sleight of mind, subliminal tactics are often implied. Much like the flash imaging in a movie that the eye doesn't recognize, but the victim becomes thirsty for that particular soft drink. In one story submitted, a couple lived with their 3 children in a county that had a spousal abuse rule. The rule was that if a third abuse call was made to the police, that person alleged would be taken to the county jail for 1 or 2 overnight stays. You can well ascertain that this rule could easily be abused should the party claiming harmed have ulterior motives, such as immediately falsely filing for a separation court order or desire to solidify sole occupation of a marital home. In this case, it was reported that the target oldest child would be placed on her school bus, and the remaining 2 youngest would be in the home with their father. The oldest would always not be at home because she was old enough to inform the police that no abuse had happened. The wife would return from the bus stop, locate at a remote area of the home, and then phone 911 to report abuse. Always happening at the same time in the morning, the targeted husband would always be having his coffee and reading the morning newspaper when the police officer would appear before him. Upon reporting 2 events to his attorney, the husband was instructed to leave the home the next time the wife disappeared in the home after returning from the bus stop, and to go immediately to the police station that was less than a 5-minute drive. Like clockwork, as soon as the wife came in the front door, ignored the other 2 younger children, and hit the first step to the 2nd floor, the target left for the police station. The police station had a small foyer with a bench with their dispatcher sitting at the police radio equipment behind thick glass having a communication hole in it. The husband identified himself, the dispatcher recorded the exact time, and he was told to have a seat on the bench. A few minutes later, he was told that the policeman who answered the complaint was on his way in to speak to him. When the policeman arrived through the foyer front door, he took a seat on the bench beside the husband and began to discuss the complaint. He explained that he heard from the dispatcher just prior to entering the development that they resided in, adding that upon questioning the wife that he had been told that he had just missed the husband who had just left and must have left the development by another exit, one of 3. The policeman went on to explain his physical findings of abuse to the wife. Other than some redness to her upper chest, there existed no arm-grabbing bruises, no facial trauma, or other evidence that he had experienced with other domestic abuse cases. His last declaration was that his report would reflect everything that they spoke of, and that the husband would not go to jail, this being the 3rd complaint. The husband, upon legal advice, Soon installed surveillance equipment is non-private areas of the main floor, whereas all previous spousal abuse complaints alleged to have occurred. Another method extreme narcissists often use is by engaging in verbal campaigns predominantly via telephoning intended victims, which we have established are friends, family, children, and the like. The victim, under this contact method, will generally be receiving contact on a steady diet depending on the task at hand. Amazingly, the narcissist will have an uncanny sense to know exactly how far to push their sales pitch. They seem to know just where the line between belief and disbelief exists. This section also touched on targets relative to their relationship to the theory of victims against targets. We also touched on how children can be victimized in the narcissist plans. So let us move on to flying monkeys, the next topic closely associated with victims. If you haven't viewed episode 1, the term flying monkeys comes to us from the movie The Wizard of Oz, wherein the witch uses and instructs her recruitments to perform her tasks against her target. This transpires when that victim we spoke of earlier becomes an instrument to cause damage to the narcissist's target. You'll agree, not a long stretch from being a victim to becoming a flying monkey. At this point in time, the narcissist is a veteran at his or her endeavors. He or she has had much experience in these tactics. In my next episode 3, we will expand and explain the earlier origins of this behavior. When a victim is elevated to flying monkey status, they are provided with a specific task to perform against the target. These tasks are not just the gossiping involvement enlisted as a mere victim. At this point in time, the narcissist is a veteran at his or her endeavors. He or she has had much experience in these tactics. In my next episode 3, we will expand and explain the earlier origins of this behavior. When a victim is elevated to flying monkey status, they are provided with a specific task to perform against the target. These tasks are no longer just involvement in gossip. Once your belief in the narcissist is assured, you may be beckoned to conduct a certain task. That task could span from just being agreeable that an abuse was committed to conducting damaging telephone calls. For example, a few friends or spousal relatives were quick to catch on when the narcissist took her victimization to higher levels that the would-be flying monkey felt in their hearts were not and could not be true. Some later confessing to me that language such as, "I hope he dies of a heart attack," or "gets killed being robbed." This evented when the telephone campaign heightened. These folks eventually gave to the narcissist what she first desired be done to me. They washed their hands of her and later told me of the issues. A mid-range example would have been the times when preschool teachers or their assistants were recruited to phone or write me when I was late for my pickup responsibility. This was back before cellular phones were so advanced, and even once when it was pre-planned that the narcissist would do this errand due to a pressing issue. An extreme example would be when a male flying monkey was tasked with canceling insurance coverage at a stressful time when tens of thousands of dollars would have broken me in many ways. This required that the flying monkey was furnished with personal information to enable the damages. At first, this looked more like an error or a disreputable insurance carrier getting out of huge medical expense for one of my children. It later came to light when I found out that the president of this insurer also belonged to a fraternity, which gave me a direct contact that corrected the situation. However, I was denied a copy of the audio telephone recording, probably in fear that I would take drastic measures against the culprits. How the narcissist convincingly enlists others to do their bidding. All of the experts I've sought consoling from, the reading materials consumed, or the seminars virtually attended, they all have the same response, that the narcissist portrays themselves as the ultimate victim. Even though no flying monkey or any child alienated has ever experienced such bad behavior from the target, they will be convinced otherwise. Even though 2 of my 3 children are totally alienated in adulthood, their programming was several years in the creation phase. If you doubt that, let me tell you that I've been divorced for over 21 years. That equates to years that the same horrible stories were related. How? Gossip around the kitchen table. Children overheard many of those damaging telephone calls, or inclusion when stories are related to outsiders. All of these examples are due to the needs of the narcissist to be viewed as the ultimate victim. The one example that I recently learned of was an otherwise funny event that happened over 10 years earlier. Hence, for over at least 10 years, it was instilled in the real victim, my son, to have been terrible. In truth, the funny statement was heard and approved by the narcissist and her then beau prior to being delivered to a roaring crowd. Okay, you are now a certified target. Friends, relatives, or most severely, your children no longer have anything to do with you. Where do you go from here? In my opinion, and based on my teachings and experiences, much is required of you. The following are my points for you to consider. This is not about an eye for an eye. I believe that you should support the love and attention that the true victim provides to the narcissist, not their need for supply. Supply is the fodder that the narcissist requires to campaign against their target. Although narcissism was more unknown in years past, it has recently been elevated in importance by the legal and psychological communities. Retaliating and using the same tactics only additionally harms the real victim. In my case, I reconnected with my ex-wife early on, accepting her new romances, helping out when requested, and assisting her household needs whenever possible. I had figured that I could show a good example to others and change many of their beliefs that they had of me. In many cases that did work. However, I was obviously oblivious to any behind-the-door slurs or other insidious allegations that were culminating against me. After 21 years after being divorced, it is obvious to all that my children were not experiencing the same treatment that I had afforded their mother. In my opinion, cut off all relations and avenues of communication with the narcissist. It is, or will be, obvious that you are or have been providing fodder for your narcissist to use against you and portray themselves as the ultimate victim. You can have no idea of how many meaningful texts that you sent her have been manipulated or maligned. For example, I would bet that all of those COVID-19 texts or emails that I sent her in the false belief that we were equally devoted to the well-being of others were probably ill-treated. Your case may be less severe, but even if your birthday, Father's Day or Mother's Day cards have stopped, or if no contact at all is received, keep in touch. They may have blocked your contact. For whatever reason that they have, two wrongs will not equal a right. In my case, I am a senior citizen and have moved to a resort retirement community, but I always try and text at least once a week and send cards or gifts when I can. Even if you feel that the situation is hopeless, don't give up on your children. You were there for them while they were growing up. Do not stop broadcasting your love now. Treat them as the true victims even when they don't know that they are. Don't judge the treatment of you as being personal. Life is a series of actions and reactions. Their treatment of you is reactionary. They are reacting on premises of falsehoods that you yourself may have been baited into. Yes, you have most probably reacted to some circumstance or to some event in a manner unlike you. You became fodder for the narcissist goals. You are not alone or abandoned. Don't feel as though you are. That creates more fodder for the narcissist. You are, in a sense, being punished by the alienation techniques. You have caring people around you, so don't act as you do not. Even if nearest relatives are far in distance, you still have humanitarians, neighbors, acquaintances, golf buddies, and the like. Your narcissist has the ill-gotten belief that they have taken everyone that cares away from you. In my case, just as if I still lived nearby, I am not without caring folks around me. I have the same chances of needing to phone 911, summon an ambulance, or get transportation if needed. Actually, I am better prepared now than when my children were speaking to me. I am literally guaranteed not to lie here in distress for any long period of time. Those, in the past, once or twice a month telephone call was of no big deal to the senior citizen. Don't sulk on falsely be burdening to those alienated from you. Should you ever trust those alienated if or when they reunite with you? In all honesty, of course, you shouldn't, nor would you be expected to. It has been already demonstrated that the alienated have shown poor judgment and are influenced by a devout narcissist unconcerned about your well-being. In my opinion, one should seek out needs elsewhere. In my case, a good attorney, prepared necessary documents, and pre-plan even your final arrangements including disposal of remains. Oh, that sounds harsh. I aver that if you don't attend to your needs, it may very well be that no one else can or will be willing. Yes, I went there. Your estate planning may go through numerous stages, especially after being alienated. In my case, I am not going to disinherit my children, but I am cognizant of terms necessary to elude their narcissist. Perhaps a trust should be created. I advise to inquire with an expert. I was just thinking that I made it a habit not to divulge my assets since the divorce. Considering the current treatment, I am willing to bet that my children think less of me than perhaps that they should. I wasn't raised that way. Both my parents passed away with little or nothing. They were not abandoned. Identifying child alienation: what to note or look for. 1. Consistently speaking negatively about the targeted parent in front of the child. 2. Restricting the child's contact with the targeted parent. 3. Interfering in the targeted parent's communication with the child. 4. Deliberately creating conflict between the child and the targeted parent. 5. Extreme denigration of the rejected parent by the child. 6. Weak or inadequate reasons for the denigration by the child. 7. Absence of ambivalence and guilt in the child. 8. The rejected parent is seen as all bad. The above partial list is not directed to the child victim around the time of divorce, but can happen or continue into their adulthood. And now to the subject of common indications and features of alienation. What circumstances enable alienation to occur and cause harm to victims? Custody arrangements can affect the stimulus to alienate. In instances where custody is split, whereas one parent has the majority of time with the children, that parent is more likely to execute alienation tactics. Experts identify the conditions as going from overt to covert. Overt being out loud and specific statements to the victim's. Covert would be subliminal messaging or disparaging remarks in company of others, but in the presence of the intended child and/or victim. This issue is in part due to the statistic that a father that sees his children more than once per week is rated at 22%. One method is by placing burdens on the victims which causes a difficulty, worry, or hard feelings. Another is instilling the belief that the other parent is causing harm in some untrue manner. Another lecturing the victim on matters that are not socially or age appropriate. Another may be causing conflicts by utilizing loyalty as suggestion to hold as secret. The final being straight out dishonest, untruthful, or maligning past truths or events. The above mentioned is very hard to discover and identify when you have less parental time and quality time with the victim's. Without becoming the same aggressor, you should ask the suspected victim if there is anything on their mind or that they would like to talk about. Is there any concerns or questions that they may have? How are they coping with the new family arrangement? Is there anything that this parent can help you to better understand? Focusing on general questions that are not directly associated with the other parent or suspected abuser. Diary or interchanges even if you are steadfastly shut off. Those alienated often feel that they should hold secrets and to be faithful to the alienator. See diary tips in the following sections. On the topic of secretively used defamation tactics, the narcissist will often employ secretly defaming their victim, which can be really difficult to sense if you have limited custody time and cannot devote the attention to your children's everyday happenings. This tactic may include, but not be limited to, my experiences, including mail rejections, informing school, church officials, or medial facilitators that you, the target, have no parental rights. These tactics were not limited to fabricating custody rights, character assassination, and abuse allegations. These traits are usually very malicious and will pertain to all school personnel, officials, etc. Fighting these tactics can be legally costly and time-consuming. Go to the video and to view redacted documentation of the aforementioned. More on flying monkeys. When people discuss narcissists, they sometimes use the phrase flying monkeys. Flying monkeys refer to people who carry out the work of a narcissist or an abusive person, and the term derives from the Wizard of Oz, in which the Wicked Witch of the West puts flying monkeys under her spell. Flying monkeys can go beyond first-party entities. Reminder: flying monkeys can apply from those who spread the alienating parent's harmful rumors, lies, and/or statements that cause social injury, parent-child relationship damage, or an adverse opinion of the victim target. Example: a neighbor who the alienator recruited helps disrupt your legal spaces based on false information or lie. Or recruitment is solicited within your circle of friends and or even immediate family that supervenes mental torment and disdain. A second party to the same critique initiated by the original flying monkey. Back to Joan for a testimonial.
Joan here again with another attested scenario. This target reports that their ex had many flying monkeys in their neighborhood that believed the abuse allegations to the extreme of it, joining to verbally challenge the target and or being involved in separation tactics, such as relocating the target's bedroom furniture to another room. One of these neighbors later reached out to make amends to the target after they eventually changed their mind, the eventual uncloaking of the narcissists. It's not unusual that the flying monkey recruitment will continue years into a child's adulthood, even with their significant others, their future in-laws, or others in the company, thereof being drawn into the narcissist's need to smear and assure their self-esteem. Even after vacating the home with the children, the narcissist continued the tactics with these same neighbors and other common contacts, such as babysitters, teachers, and parents of the children's classmates. Sending it back to Claude to discuss the topic of gaslighting.
Now for a lesson on the methods of gaslighting. The practice of psychologically manipulating someone into questioning their own sanity, memory, or powers of reasoning. Gaslighting is an insidious technique of deception and psychological manipulation. Case in point, a victim, whether a child or an adult, will eventually believe a falsehood if it is administered to them repeatedly over a period of weeks, months, or even many years. The target usually will have no indication that this gaslighting is occurring. He or she will have no hint or reason to know what is going on. One target reported that they later discovered that the gaslighting tactic was used so secretively that the target had no inclination of the false allegations for many years.
Joan here with an example from the author. Gaslighting, in my case, varied from the most minor to the extreme. A minor issue impressed on children when they were young was that I divorced mom. It's not a far leap for some children to feel that dad divorced them too. A medium-grade issue happened when my children were under 12 years old. It was impressed upon them that dad would be hurt that he isn't invited to all old neighbors' son's birthday party. They were instructed to tell me that they had to attend their mom's aunt's birthday, which fell on one of my custody days. I, having respect for this wonderful aunt, said yes. The morning of the party, my son fell apart while playing in my finished basement. A close friend was with me in the kitchen when my son came up from the basement hysterically upset. Then he confessed the lie and refused to attend the real party. I made every attempt to convince him that it was okay with me that attend the party, even suggesting various scenarios that I could drop him off to the party and pick him up when he was ready to leave. He refused and spent the day with me while the other two were with and attended with their mom. The most recent and major step to two of my children becoming alienated happened at my only son's wedding eve meet and greet. Before about 40 guests, he rejected my intention to offer a toast at his wedding. Very hurt, I didn't know which was worse, that he blamed his fiancé for the decision or what I overheard him telling his then future father-in-law not 30 minutes afterwards. I overheard that his decision was because I embarrass his mother when speaking in public at such affairs. He added that I embarrassed her by relating an invented divorce scene that erroneously happened in court. The event was very true, and it happened over 10 years earlier at my oldest daughter's graduation party. What he wasn't told for a successful gaslighting was that I had cleared the joke with his mom and her then boyfriend Joe well before the event. The joke line that drew great applause and laughter from all, including the alleged harmed ex-wife, was my ex asked that I say a few words for our daughter's graduation because she isn't comfortable speaking in public, adding that though she knocked it out of the park in divorce court, proving that a narcissist can take any situation from years prior and sell it to adult victims by hook, line, and sinker. Since at wedding and other than MIS treatments, 2 of my 3 children have totally alienated from me. As earlier described by Claude, I had taken the path of staying in contact with my ex, helping her when required, and setting a good example before my children. God only knows what other gaslighting was used against me. Presently, I've been proven wrong and have taken a different course to cut all ties with her. Back to Claude for another lesson.
Claude here. The topic that goes along with gaslighting is the pre-alienation declarations. Throughout the author's studies, this topic is thought to have first origins here. Pre-alienation declarations are stated due to the impatience of the narcissist. This occurs when they just have to personally inform their target of just how each victim feels about you. In the author's case, this was delivered by telephone just weeks before being alienated by 2 of his children. The order of the telephone delivery went from oldest to youngest child and continued to the ex's needs having to do with grandchildren. Now, we'll go to Joan for a few cited scenarios.
Joan here again with a few examples of the narcissist's types of pre-alienation declarations. First, the statements are most often very negative and condescending. Second, they will typically reflect the particular gaslighting issue imposed upon the cited victim. Lastly, they often end with portraying the narcissist as the one victimized. For example, if the declaration involved how one victim feels about you, your lack of attention, lack of visits, or daily undivided attention, it is usually exactly what the narcissist has impressed upon that victim. An example may be that the target is disinterested in the daily life of the victim, such as their life adventures, work atmosphere, or love life. All issues that would not be known to the target, especially when the partially alienated victim doesn't express these topics to the target, which is widely considered to be the norm. When the narcissist gets to declaring their personal issues with the target, it usually entails traits that normal divorced couples no longer have in common. One example may be that the target isn't available for outings with grandchildren or co-babysitting chores in the same house, even if such events would involve a triangular situation with one's ex's latest love interest. Back to Claude McDaniel for more.
Claude here to address the topic of preparing for family mediation. Family mediation is a facilitated process of family dispute resolution. A family law mediator promotes discussion and negotiation that allows the participants involved in a conflict or a dispute the opportunity to exchange divergent views, ask questions, discuss difficult topics, and find solutions. The court-certified mediator will furnish the court with their findings and sometimes recommendations. Since the author's divorce over 20 years ago, courts are now acknowledging narcissistic disorders and other secondary influences when determining custody and other elements of concern. Important to know is that not all psychology organizations such as APA, NAMI, etc. do not address all mental health issues in their publications and reporting, unlike an organization such as the FDA. Adaptations can be years in the making and limited to the topics that the then leaders of such organizations desire to address. Therefore, it's important that you and your legal counsel educate on this matter pre-trial. Males, as opposed to females, when having a hands-on time-consuming investment in a child's upbringing, should maintain records of their efforts. It is not uncommon for the narcissist party to abandon many maternal or paternal duties during the split of the relationship. Therefore, it is recommended that a diary be maintained along with personal charge card or cash receipts be cataloged to present to the mediator. Tips on maintaining diaresis previously mentioned. Maintaining records for mediation, court appearances, depositions, and the such are very important. Today's modern cellular telephones are a great tool for audio or video recording or diarying, and most devices will log the date and time. It is recommended to password that to secure your data. Regarding owned weapons, particularly firearms, we suggest the removal of firearms from the residence, having recipients sign and date the conveyance of who has current custody of. It is uncommon that the firearm tactic be applied in court without a previous hint of an issue. This exact scenario happened to our author. To totally deflate testimony, he produced written proof of who was given the firearm and that the cited handgun was removed from the home prior to the dates testified to. Now on the subject of navigating custody disputes. The narcissist practicing alienation techniques generally will not adhere to court-ordered custody boundaries. In the author's experience, the tactics included not honoring and/or abusing custody dates and times, finding the children not to be home at pickup times, scheduling child activities against set custodial orders, and even scheduling their employment that interfered with custody when teenage years were reached. The scheduling of weekends away or vacations were taken advantage of. Now here's Joan with an example on this topic.
The author explains that a child can especially be enticed to a fun vacation or out to a fun excursion when they are scheduled to be with the other custodial parent. A narcissistic parent with grandiose issues will have no regard to court custody orders, downright constantly breaking the rules. How is the other duly authorized parent to convince a 10-year-old to do otherwise? They can't. In another example, the targeted parent reports that when they were successful in retaining custody per se on the child's birthday, the narcissistic parent would almost always find methods to be present. In the author's experience, often in tow with the new beau, back to Claude for final thoughts.
This concludes part 1 of our author's story on his experiences and education on narcissistic alienation. In this case, alienated from children. Part 2 will be arriving soon with subjects including false police reports, money issues, and signs of narcissism that were somewhat evident before having children. These signs entailed alienation from other family and friends before marriage, during, and continuing after divorce. This is Claude McDaniel saying farewell on behalf of Joan Sink and myself. Till next time.
I'm narrating for the author. He says thank you for listening or viewing part 1 of his 3-part series. This portion of his story is actually the middle of the many years educating and navigating through this phenomenon. Part 2 will define experiences before children and pre-marriage. The road of knowledge then learned, the narcissistic behavior then realized, and the alienation bestowed on others, and how it was used in effectuating tactics against relatives, friends, and others. Part 3 will be life since being alienated, how to handle your affairs without your closest loved ones, and how to understand by further education and to navigate within these new parameters. Part 3 will also include more stories from other targets that were hurt or required coaching. He hopes to be able to present to you many testimonials from other victims as well. Victims can range from those remotely harmed by personal disheartening campaigns, or those bystanding victims which I will be better offer explanations on at that time. We will also be delving into how to deal with alienation under different circumstances, such as if you have remarried, what is age appropriate, or needing to plan with relying on professionals if you are elderly. Oh, that's not that sad. It's just a fact of life necessary if those were the cards dealt to you by the narcissist. Educate, navigate. You can't rely on those who were removed from your life. jclaudemcdaniel@gmail.com, and please advise if your story can be made public. Thank you, J. Claude McDaniel. Before we leave you, attached is a copy of the post office response to a complaint filed when birthday cards and other harmless mail was sent and returned by the mother. This sample is a letter to the school vice principal from the father's attorney correcting their false accusations implied by the children's mother. This final sample is a letter to the school vice principal thanking them for a meeting in which the school and staff reversed their position to exclude the father per false accusations made by the mother. More examples will be included in the next broadcasts. Thank you for tuning into this chapter.